Well, I'm sure you all want to listen to me now, but I'm Carrie Robb. I'm the programming coordinator for St. Louis County Library, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all to tonight's program with record-breaking long-distance swimmer Diana Nyad. So just a couple quick things. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Maryville University, and
Thank you. On behalf of the St. Louis County Library Foundation and Go St. Louis, I am truly honored to introduce Diana Nyad this evening. This fall, I was fortunate enough to go to the speaker series at Powell Hall, and she just lit up the room. And so today, what did you say? She just lit up the room. And believe me, you're in for an empowering evening that will expand your horizons and allow you to think really big. Diana Nyad will share her amazing, inspiring story of her record-breaking swim after 4 failed attempts from Cuba to Florida at the age of 64, and her extraordinary conquest to live life to the highest level in and out of the water. So on September 2nd, 2013, picture this, Diana Nyad emerged on the shores of Key West, Florida. After completing a 110-mile swim in 53 hours. And for those of you who are swimmers, that's a little more than 2 miles an hour. Imagine, 53 hours. How many of us could sleep for 53 hours, let alone swim for 53 hours? So tonight she's going to share with us in her book, Find a Way, her life experiences. And she is an extraordinary athlete, but she's also an extraordinary speaker, motivational speaker. And she will get to you tonight to accept the challenge, find the courage to accept the challenge, find the strength to pursue, and look for that team.
I wondered if I could take a minute, because I'm sure all of you, life is complicated, and we're lucky to be healthy and safe, but I'm sure, like me, a lot of you today are thinking of the people of Istanbul, and I might throw in there as well that my good friend Pat Summitt, perhaps the greatest coach who's ever coached any sport, passed away today. So for all those souls, let's take just a moment and think about them. I was working out at a hotel gym one time at an event Pat Summitt was at as well, and she was on the bike next to me. When she looked over after a while, I was doing sprints and I was, pretty intense. She said, "Are you sure that's good for you?" I must say, I don't, thank you. I don't pretend to be anything but my age. I'm 66, a couple months away from 67. We're all traveling on a one-way street. I don't care what religion you are or what you believe in terms of this life or some other life, but all I can tell you is that for me, it's just gotten in every way, including physically, better and better and better. I do say, though, Nancy, to you, and the incredible shape you're in and what you accomplished at your age as an athlete, we are the exact same age, same year, And she reminds me that Meryl Streep and Lionel Richie and, you know, a number of terrific people are right in our year. But sometimes people will come up to me and say, do you realize we're the exact same age? And under my breath I go, holy shit, she looks 120. But Nancy, when you came up to me today, I thought, am I really looking as young as you? You are fit. You are fit, my friend. You know, we all, and here we are in a library, we all love a story, don't we? I don't think you can go back to the cave dwellings and, you know, the colored pictures on a wall, to the pages of Dostoevsky. We love a story, and I got to live a compelling story and live it out loud. And I guess whenever you hear, especially a biography, an autobiography, I love when you're my age, you can call your book a memoir. It's very sexy. You know, before this age, it's just a book. Now it's a memoir. But whenever you hear the details of a life story, so if today Yo-Yo Ma were here, and to talk about his love of the cello and his passion for classical music and that world, so maybe a few of you know that world, I don't. So you get immersed, you listen to that story, and it has eccentric details of the world of the cello. But in the end, he's a human being who's immersed himself in his art, and you pluck from that the philosophies and the strains of living a life that relate to your life. So my story sounds like the story of an athlete, a swimmer, an extreme adventurer, and it is all that, and I don't want to run away from any of that. I'm proud. You know, I don't know if you remember, but when Martina Navratilova finally retired, and one of the greatest who ever held a racket, she knelt down on the grass of Wimbledon. I cried, and she plucked a couple of the blades of grass from her place where she said she learned all her life lessons, where she had her triumphs, but she had her losses too. And she remembered her parents who had brought her into the world of tennis, and she defected as a teenager, didn't see them for years. It took a lot of courage at her young age to do all that. She took those couple of blades of grass and she tucked them in her pocket. Well, for me, the ocean, we live on a blue jewel of a planet. And to think that that's my place, that I learned my lessons and had a few triumphs and had a lot of failures and made noble friendships and chased history and the grand sense of adventure, I'm very proud of all that. And so the story that I tell about the trajectory of my, impassioned dream is filled with the vocabulary of a swimmer, an adventurer, an athlete. But I hope in the few minutes that I have tonight to share with you some of that story, that you will, for your lives, pluck out what it means to you. There were several thousand people on the beach in Key West when we finally made it and stumbled up onto the shore. And they were weeping. I remember I was dazed. I was dazed physically. I was certainly rocked emotionally. And I will admit to you that for those 35 years, since I first tried the Cuba swim to the end, and many, many training swims when I'd be out there, because I think of myself as something of an orator, I would be practicing the speech I think. What will the words of wisdom and poetry be when I finally emerge from the sea? Will I speak to Robin Roberts directly? But it didn't happen that way. I was dazed, and I came out and saw these people with tears streaming, and I realized that it wasn't because somebody broke an athletic record, set a new endurance record. Those things might be true. It's because they saw someone who would not give up. No matter how she was knocked down, no matter how her team was defeated over and over again, she kept the left arm coming up, the right arm coming up, with unwavering commitment, and finally, starting at age 28, finishing at age 64, realized that maybe everybody called it impossible dream. This is the humorous part of the program. My song. You'll understand what I mean. Revelry. That's my song, Revelry. Get up. Get up with the morning. Don't miss anything. And I was lucky. That ethic, don't miss anything, came into my life early. I had a Greek-Egyptian father who was histrionic, larger than life. Every day was an emotional exaltation for Aristotle Zenith Nyad. He would wake us up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I have just been to the ocean. It is a Rembrandt painting. It will change your life. Hurry up, we must go to see it. We say, Dad, we have to sleep. We have school in a few hours. I am telling you now, sleep, it is overrated. Get up. 20 minutes later, the whole family strolling along the ocean, the golden sunlight from our ankles all the way out to forever. It was a Rembrandt painting. It changed our lives. Well, on my 5th birthday, he called me into the den, my father, and over here on the desk, he had opened Webster's big, fat, unabridged dictionary. He had his hands resting on the pages. Tears were standing in his eyes. But I was used to that. And he called to me, darling, you are coming here. I have been waiting for this day for you to turn 5. Because today is the day you are going to understand the most important thing I am going to ever tell you. Come here, darling. Tomorrow, you are going to go to your little preschool. Yes, you are going to ask your little friends, is their name in the dictionary? They are going to tell you no. You are the only one. Your name, the name of my people, it is in the bold black and white, the important book, the dictionary. Come here, darling, I'm going to read it for you. Nyad. In Greek mythology, my people, the nymphs that swam in the lake, river, ocean, and fountain to protect for the gods. And definition number 2, are you listening to me, darling? Nyad, girl or woman, champion, swimmer. Oh my God, this is your destiny, darling. No, I didn't know what destiny was. I was only 5. But you know the word I heard that day? Champion. And I started walking around with my shoulders just a little bit taller. It wasn't too long after that, elementary school, I had a geography teacher who was an ex-Olympic swimmer, the most charismatic character you could ever imagine, after my father, of course. And he said that any kid who came out for the swim team would get an A in geography. And now I've learned that a lot of athletes start their careers this way. I was at the pool the next day. And he had us all swimming up and down. He wanted to see what he had. And I stopped in this lane after a while. And he was standing over the lane. And he yelled down, "Hey kid, you, what's your name again?" I said, "Nyad." He said, "Nyad? You're going to be the best swimmer in the world." That's all any kid needs, huh? You know what it was about it? I thirsted for the commitment. I loved getting up at 4:30 in the morning. Every day, never an alarm clock needed. 1,000 sit-ups every night, elbow to knee, every single one, never 9 hours. I was a little swimmer. And then the Cuban Revolution broke out. And literally, thousands of Cubans flooded into my hometown overnight. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We were flying the Cuban flag. We were eating Cuban food. We were dancing the salsa in their living rooms. And just as a brief aside on that, I will admit to you that I was miffed to be summarily thrown off Dancing with the Stars. After learning a very good rhythmic salsa as a child. Just saying. One day I was standing on the beach at that time. I was 9 years old, and we had the mystique of Cuba running through our family, our hometown, dare I say, the world over. And I said to my French mother, who, by the way, spoke with a thicker accent than my father, and that's entertaining right there. You know, you have to ask your parents to repeat themselves all the time because you don't understand them. I said, Mom, where's Cuba? I know it's out there somewhere. I can't see it. Where is it? And very chauvinist French as she was, she said, well, I'm going to show you. Look this way. No, it's this way. There. It's right there, Cuba. As a matter of fact, it's so close that you could almost swim there. That wasn't the day of the concrete vision. But I'll tell you something, in retrospect, it was a little flutter in the back of the imagination. My father's Greek vision of destiny, I turned my back on that as my worldview developed. Things are meant to be. I don't argue with anybody's personal philosophies, but that's not one of mine. But I did become a champion swimmer. I became the best in the world at swimming over the curvature of the earth with a steel trap mind. And as I got into my 20s and was holding records for swimming around Manhattan Island and Bahamas to Florida and other places on earth, the Bay of Naples, the swims off the coast of Argentina, it was always, always about Cuba. Cuba was not only that mystical place, that forbidden land right off our shores. Since 1959, we couldn't go to and they couldn't come to us. But it was also always called the Mount Everest of the world's oceans for a swimmer. If we were tonight to take this aisle down the middle here and lay out the nautical charts of the Earth's surface, except for the polar ice caps, we couldn't find a more difficult 100-mile passage in terms of obstacles against a swimmer as the Florida Straits between Havana and Key West. It's not only the sheer distance. Nobody had swum even half that before. When I was in my 20s and looking at this swim and starting to get an imagination about it, I don't know if you ever heard the story of Philippe Petit, the great tightrope walker. But he had walked everything. He had walked all the big bridges of Europe, etc., and he was literally sitting in a dentist's office, not planning anything, just kind of flipping through the pages, waiting for his appointment. And he saw what was then the World Trade Centers, and his heart stopped. And that was it. There was nothing anymore that he ever wanted to walk. He wanted to walk between the South Tower and the North Tower above Manhattan, and perhaps risk his life in doing so. It was filled his imagination until he did it. Well, when I was in my 20s and held all these records, I got the nautical charts of the Earth's surface on my floor of my apartment in Manhattan, and I was looking here and there, and Guam, and Thailand, and Europe, and Mexico, and Cuba, of course, my heart place, Cuba. And then you start researching it. The Gulf Stream comes charging, catapulting out of the Yucatan Peninsula, squeezing through that little narrow body of land, and then goes screeching east right above Havana. And you're trying to swim due north. Havana to Key West right here is the corridor you need to make it. And if you miss it, you're out here in the Gulf of Mexico, or you're out here in the Atlantic Ocean. You've got to hit the Florida Keys. And you're now being dragged 4 and 5 times your speed, east, east, east. Every time you stop, you can never touch the boat, but every time you stop over here and tread water so that your trainers can hand you a little electrolyte drink, or a little something to eat, or you've been sick to your stomach, you're in some kind of crisis, you're hallucinating, you've got shoulder pain, you're terribly sick to your stomach, you're in a liquid, 20 degrees colder than your body temperature, you're trying to digest in the supine position this way, and very little of that food is actually going into the digestive system so that you can contract the muscles. So you've got an expedition on these boats. You've got your personal handler team in charge of your life. You've got the shark team and the jellyfish team and the navigation team, the medical team, and all of them are taking care of the crises. And every time you stop for just 30 seconds, quick drink, you stop for 7 minutes because you're in the middle of a crisis, you're dragging east and east and east, and pretty soon that 110 miles that was here has now become over here 130. And now as you're coming out here more, it's 150. You're up against a wind every day of the year. 7,000 miles away off the west coast of Africa, the winds travel to the west. The easterlies travel west every day of the year, and they come up against that Gulf Stream current. And almost every day, you've got to get lucky to get one 24-hour period a month. Does the wind either calm down or clock around to a different direction? And a swimmer needs 2.5, 3 days to make it across. 1978, I tried it. I walked down to the shore in Havana. I was brash, cocky. I said, jellyfish, sharks, get out of my way. 42 hours later, the wind had whipped up. You can stand on the docks in Havana and put your tongue out, and you sense a crunch, and you think it's the sea vapor. It isn't. It's the Sahara Desert that is blowing, they call it the Sahara dust, all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, above the north of Cuba. And it whipped up. We had a forecast. It didn't hold. We didn't make it. And now this is my dream. This was always for me more than another swim. Just as the people on that beach and the 25 million people who have reached out to us since the swim, the #1 Google search in the world during the swim, for me also, it was always more than just another sporting event. It was an emblem of a star, a dream, something untouchable, perhaps never reachable, but to get there, you'd have to summon every drop of courage. You'd have to touch every fiber of your potential, and everybody around you the same. Do you know, on my team, not one person ever got paid a cent. And for years, they gave. Because of friendship, because of history, because of adventure. And then after 2 years of training, 1979, all the way 1980, couldn't get back into Cuba. And my friends would say, have you seen Guam? This time of year, it's such a lovely place to go, really. And I would say, yeah, but it's not in my soul. It's not in my heart. It's got to be Cuba. And I gave up. I gave up the dream. I got offers from the wide world of sports since I was a kid. I wanted to say the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat in the air. And there I was, traipsing around after the most successful athletes in the world, doing their thing. One week I'd be at the World Table Tennis Championships in Tokyo. The next week I'd be at the World Cross-Country Ski Championships in Zermatt, Switzerland. All the big events. Then I'd be at the World Wrist Wrestling Championships in Petaluma. And I wasn't complaining, but I kept my eye on Cuba. And every now and then, a swimmer would try to make it across. I like to think myself a sporting person. I wasn't wishing anybody any harm. But when they wouldn't make it, I'd do a little happy dance. Ooh, the dream is somehow still alive. And then I started coming toward the age of 60. I had just met Christopher Reeve, the bravest soul I ever knew. Fell off his horse and in a heartbeat became a quadriplegic. And regrets were a big theme for Chris. He used to say all the time, do it all. Do it all today.
because you have no idea what proverbial banana peel you might slip on tomorrow. My mom died, age 82. Dors bien, maman. And I started whipping into that state of existential angst. I had never been worried about aging before. I don't worry about cosmetic aging, but you start taking a look at the end of that one-way road that we're all traveling more than the beginning of it, don't you? And I started dipping into that worry that I hadn't done enough, I hadn't been enough, I wasn't the person I could admire. And I started digging around my office for a poem. I don't know about you, but I don't understand poetry. Every poem I read, when I finish it, I think to myself, why don't they just say it? Maybe if they used a few more words, that would be helpful. But this was a poem that had meant something to me at one point, and I knew I needed it now, turning 60. Maybe you know it. I bet you do. Mary Oliver, The Summer's Day. I dug around and I found it. And it was those last two lines, that brilliant rhetorical question. I had it with me, walking the dogs by the beach. I had it in my kitchen, by my breakfast every day. I had it by my bed. I had it driving my car. And over that August of 2009, turning 60, I must have read that poem, especially those last two lines, 1,000 times. Tell me, what is it you're doing with this one wild and precious life of yours? I screeched over on the 1,000th reading, and I looked in the rearview mirror. I thought, I haven't swum a stroke in 30 years. Not a stroke anywhere. Would the shoulders come back? Would the will fire up again? But that's what I'm going to do with this one wild and precious life of mine. I'm going to go chase that beautiful star, that Cuba dream that makes me be everything I am, and my whole team the same. And we started training for it. And those first few weeks, that was a rude awakening. I used to swim way up on top of the surface. I was now tugging through at a low level. I would pass out in my car afterwards, slumped over the steering wheel for hours, couldn't even drive home. But slowly but surely, the shoulders and the will did come back. I got my team together. Bonnie is now my head handler, the head of the expedition. And we tried, and we failed. Tried and failed again. Tried, which is now a fourth time, and failed a fourth time. And now the whole world was watching these failures. CNN was big on the story now. They found it inspiring. And I wanted to go a fifth time, and they said, it seems you're going to be 90 and still trying this swimming. That's great. And I tell you what, we'll be on the other shore if you ever make it. But we just don't have the resources to follow you around all the time anymore. Dr. Timothy Noakes, arguably the top sports scientist in the world, University of Cape Town in South Africa, we have learned a great deal from Tim. He taught us, for instance, when you are digesting in the supine position in a liquid colder than your body temperature for 2.5 days, don't just feed on little compressed gels and goos that you would in a marathon or a triathlon. You need real food. You're in a saltwater exposure. Have Bonnie, have you come to the side of the boat? Again, you can't touch the boat, but you tread water. Have her take big handfuls of plain cooked pasta and just drop them in your mouth this way. I'm telling you, Bonnie and I could get a job at SeaWorld at any time. And now Tim Noakes wrote me kind of a Dear John letter. And he said, it's valiant, you want to go again. I see it, that you believe. Nothing can keep you from believing. But I'm telling you, nobody of any era, any age, any gender is ever going to do this swim. I'm sending you now all the empirical calculations of, for instance, the glycogen deprivation. You know, I'm not even talking about the animals under the sea. I'm not talking about the wind conditions and the eddies within the Gulf Stream and all these variables that evidently there would be an under 0.1% chance of getting all of those together at one time. I'm just talking about fuel. You cannot take in enough fuel to match what you're putting out in this colder water to last this amount of time. You will not be conscious by the time it takes you to reach the other side. And I wrote Tim back and Sanjay Gupta from CNN and the New York Times and all of them, and I said, you know, we so appreciate what you've given us by showing your respect and following our story. I've learned a great deal from a lot of you, and you're just forgetting, though, the most critical factor in this endeavor, in any endeavor that's important to any of us, and that's the power of the human spirit. You can give me the glycogen deprivation calculations all day long. Show me the calculations of the limitation of the human spirit. We don't know that limitation. We have no idea what the ceiling is on the human spirit. Have I mentioned the sharks at all yet? These are the oceanic white tips, the lemons, the tigers. When you're 50, 60 miles offshore where there are no reefs, no bait fish for them to feed on, and they haven't eaten in a week or two, and an unassuming, innocent little swimmer goes by, making a little low-frequency vibration on the surface. From 2.2 miles away, they hear and they come. Doesn't mean they're all coming to attack. Mostly they're curious. They're swimming along behind you out at a V this way. But as the shark experts say to me, you know, you don't have to worry. They're intelligent animals. They know the Homo sapien is not their food. They don't want to eat you. Yes, they probably will come up and take a leg. You know, but they're not going to eat you whole. Now, isn't that reassuring? Yeah, especially 50 miles offshore. So I had a team of divers. First of all, under the two kayaks to the right of me and behind me, we attached something called the shark shield. It's an electronic device that emits an elliptical field of electricity, and I've seen all the film where sharks will come in and take bait and chum and take it down, and then you put the electric field under there. They come and they arch the back and they flare the teeth. They're bothered and they go away. And then there's other film where when they're really hungry, they come right through the electricity and just bite anyway. So we had a team of divers who put my life ahead of theirs. They dive 2 by 2 all through the night. We use no lights. Lights attract jellyfish, lights attract sharks. We go in the pitch black of night unless there happens to be a little moonlight. And they dive. It's hard swimming underwater against resistance, especially while you're looking around and you have no lights and you're trying to see the eyes, luminescent eyes of the predators below. But they did. My guys dove all night long for me, for every attempt we did, every nighttime swim we did, and one of their legs was going to go probably before one of mine. How am I ever going to thank them? The box jellyfish is the most potent venom on the planet. No spider, no eel, no snake can kill as quickly as the box. It's a tiny little, you can't believe it, it's as big as a square of sugar cube. It's got tentacles that don't go any longer than 3 meters, 9 feet long, and the tentacles are so wispy. It feels like a strand of a little thin piece of hair when it goes across your lips or comes across your neck. And usually you die instantaneously. When I was hit in 2011 by a swarming, several million of them, tentacles wrapped all around the biceps, down the arms, across the neck, down the back. I truly believe, even though we had a medical team and they're ready with epinephrine, oxygen, prednisone, injections, everything, the kitchen sink, I truly believe it was will that got me through. I think when you do something like this, you have a resolve, similar to when you start the day of an Ironman. You've trained, No stone left unturned. That day may be tough for you, tougher than you thought it was going to be. But because your resolve is so titanium tough at the beginning, no matter what, unexpected or expected, comes your way, you're going to continue. You're going to keep that marathon, as hellish as it's going to be. You're going to pick up another leg, and even if you don't beat your best time, you will not quit. You'll go through that finish line. Won't you, Nancy? Evidently, you have many times, and I honor you for that. We're just having a little private moment. I have a tremendous regard for all the world's great adventurers. If you tell me you have run across the Kalahari Desert, you have my respect. And I think it's especially, I don't know about you, but I'm very attracted to the big alpine climbs. I love reading the K2 Annapurna Mount Everest climbs. I don't know if you've seen the current film Everest, but Ed Vistiers is a friend of mine, and he has climbed Everest more than any human being alive, the pure way, without bottled oxygen. And Ed says when he's above 26,000 feet on any of these peaks, if he takes a step of just a couple of inches like this, not a big stride, just a step of a few inches, the duress on his pulmonary system is so egregious that he has to stand there and take a minimum of 25 deep breaths before he can take a step of just another couple of inches. Well, I don't know what it's like at the top of the world, but I am the only one who knows what it's like as a swimmer, far, far offshore. And the issue for me that's different than altitude sickness or extreme heat in the desert is sensory deprivation. You've got this tight cap over your ears to keep the heat in your head. You don't hear anything. A loud police whistle is the way Bonnie can get my attention. You've got fogged over goggles, and you're turning your head 60 times a minute this way. So very soon, forget about the 53 hours of the actual Cuba swim, you're out on a 12-hour training swim, or a 14-hour. Just a few hours into it, you are off in your little world of Stephen Hawking and the grandeur of the universe. Your childhood is wafting through your brain. And Bonnie was insistent that I develop some way to stay close to reality in case we do have a shark hit fast, in case the box jellyfish hits and we need a medical protocol in a hurry. She wants me to not be drifting off and be involved as I was in the second night of the Cuba swim this last time. The Taj Mahal over here, grand, really? And I was so fixated on it, I wasn't swimming, and I'm getting dragged to the east. She wants me to do some counting and some singing, and so I developed a playlist of 85 songs. You know, these are all songs from my generation. This is, you know, the Beatles and Neil Young, and in the middle of the night especially, eerie, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you're in this world of the ocean, the magic of it all. And I would pick Neil Young's The Needle and the Damage Done. I've actually spoken to Neil Young about this, and he says, really? I would have thought you'd be singing Hallelujah, something out there, not something, you know, heroin addiction in New York City. But it's not about the lyrics, it's about that falsetto voice of his, magical, and I'd be so engaged, I'd decide to sing Neil Young's The Damage Done 1,000 times, exactly the way he recorded it. Don't have earphones on. I am just hearing it in my brain, but I'm singing to the tempo that he recorded it in. And after a while, you've got this metronomic stroke that's geared in. You can count time to precision by singing songs that you know well. So I would sing out there at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I hear you knocking on my cellar door. I love you, baby, can I have some more? Ooh, the damage done. And when I get to 1,000 Neil Youngs, not a second over or under. I am at 11 hours and 5 minutes. Bonnie was the tough one. She didn't want to go a fifth time. She said she almost saw her best friend die out there, and she was helpless. She said if anybody could have done this swim, it would have been me, but it can't be done. And I said, Bonnie, you know, for me anymore, I've had to come to that age-old debate of the Greeks, of the journey and the destination. Yes, the destination seems unlikely. If you went to Vegas on this, they had a 0% chance. So there's no bet. But the journey, it's ironic because you wouldn't take such a difficult journey if you didn't believe that you'd reach the destination one day. But the journey itself has to be worthwhile. And Bonnie, hasn't it been worthwhile so far? Hasn't it been a worthy, noble journey? And she said it has. But I'm tired of riding back in the boat to Key West every time. Deflated, crushed. And I just don't believe it. I don't believe we're ever going to get there. It's just the journey with no destination dangling anymore. And I said, Bonnie, you know, this last year, you've seen me. I've had that old Teddy Roosevelt quote on my desk, and I've been living it. I'm sure you guys know it too, but to paraphrase, it says, you go ahead. You sit in your comfortable armchair. You be the critic. You be the analyst. You be comfortable. While this guy gets in the ring, and he gets bloodied, he gets dirtied, and he suffers, and he fails, and he falls. And he falls and he fails over and over again. Teddy Roosevelt says, I'd rather be this guy than the cold, timid soul who will never know success because he's not willing to know failure. I want to dare greatly. Bonnie called me the next day and said, I want to freaking dare greatly too. And there we were, a fifth time on the Havana shore. And I'll tell you, that horizon looked farther away than it ever did before. We knew too well what was out there. And that's where the title of the book came from. Bonnie grabbed my shoulders and she said, let's find a way. First day was glorious. I'm singing Janis Joplin, Beatles, Rolling Stones. John Bartlett, our intrepid navigator, is coming out of his cabin with his thumbs up like this. We never saw that before. The first night, the wind whipped up, and I was wearing this prosthetic silicone mask because the highly scientific pantyhose we had worn the year before didn't work out that well. We could figure out how to protect the whole body, even though it was difficult swimming with that gear on. You want to be free, you want to be light and loose. And I had what they call a skin suit on. It's really tight to the skin, but the tentacles can't penetrate the fabric. Had on surgeon's gloves that are very difficult. They present a lot of resistance to the hands, but it was life or death. I needed them through the night hours. And now the face, we couldn't solve the mouth. How to protect the mouth and still be able to breathe. So a prostheticist who works with survivors from the war whose faces are blown up, he makes them beautiful masks to wear while they're waiting for their skin graft surgery. He worked with me, prototype after prototype, for 9 months, and finally developed a mask where I had an insert retainer. I could bite with my teeth and open the mouthpiece the best I could, even though it wasn't as malleable as your real mouth. And that first night with the wind cascading, the waves toward my face, walls of salt water slapping, I was taking that in, I was vomiting into the mask, and now your tensile strength is weak and your fingertips are numb, and it's very difficult to find the edge of that silicone to pull it up and clean the mask out and get it back on. The next day, instead of coming over, getting the call to come over to the boat to get my quick feedings, get some electrolyte liquids down, some calories down, and now you don't feel well, so your team has to beg you to take even an ounce of liquid into your stomach. Now, Bonnie's calling me over every 45 minutes, every hour, to take a quick stop instead of every 90 minutes like usual, making up for the dehydration and the calories lost from vomiting the night before and getting ready for the second night, which, if it's possible, was more hellish than the first night. Now I've forgotten who I was. I was looking at the Taj Mahal for a long time over here, and we're going east. At one point, I could have sworn that right below me here, I saw it so clearly, was the yellow brick road. And I saw those people, but as I looked more carefully, they were so far down, I couldn't see them all, but I thought it was Dorothy and the Tin Man, but it wasn't. It was the Seven Dwarfs. And they were trudging along with their little back knapsacks like this. I just stopped altogether. I said, Bonnie, do you see the yellow brick road? And the Seven Dwarfs right here under me? She wanted to humor me. She just wanted me to get swimming again. She looked over and she said, yeah, I see him. I see him. And you know the great thing about them? They're going right where you're going, so just follow them for a while. I just can't tell you how helpful they were. And you know, I was trying to remember all their names, Grumpy and those people, and as I would breathe to the left, my right ear goes down toward the ocean floor, and I could hear them singing and whistling. Hi-ho, hi-ho, it's off to work we go. I was hanging on by a thread. I was cold. I was looking up at the 4 billion stars you can literally see out above the Gulf Stream. And Bonnie blew the whistle. She made an executive decision to call shark when there was no shark. Got my attention. I stopped swimming. You don't want to make any splash on the surface. You're supposed to dog paddle real quietly over toward the boat. Keep your legs up if you can, real close to your body. And as I got over here, she said, turn around. And I turned around this way, and she said, what do you see? My vision was so shot at that point, all I saw was black. I saw black sea, black sky, just a huge canvas of black. I said, I don't see anything. She said, come on, there's something. I want you to see it. Feather up a little bit. And I feathered up this way a little bit. I saw a white strip, a filament across the center, this way, through the black. I thought the sun's coming up. The sun's rays are going to warm my body. You know how it is. The sunrise means hope. And I felt hope. I said, the sun, Bonnie, it's the sun. And now Bonnie was crying. And she's not a crier. She said, it's better than the sun. Better than the sun. Those are the lights of Key West. That was a vision that I had in my brain for 35 years, that we would be the team that would be the first to see the lights of Key West coming all the way from Cuba. And there they were. Well, actually they weren't right there. It turns out we had 15 more hours to swim to get there, but we had done dozens and dozens of 15-hour swims, so I took this time to think about what this quest had meant to my life and my team. A couple of hours from shore, bright blue skies now, palm trees visible. I asked the team, all 44 of them on their 5 boats, to come around. They made a semicircle here, and I cried like a baby. I said, I guess I'm going to stumble up on that beach pretty soon. I guess somebody's going to take my picture. Don't you ever forget, because I will never forget, that we did this together. We made history together. A year after the stumble up on that beach, we were invited to Havana. Now this is before President Castro and President Obama announced the rapprochement. And in Fidel's White Palace, for the first time since 1959, they played the Star-Spangled Banner. They flew the Cuban and American flags side by side, and we wept. My entire team, shoulder to shoulder, facing the entire entourage of Cubans, shoulder to shoulder. Bonnie and I are now getting together on the heels of our moment of inspiration and our moment of opportunity to do things in this world of inspiration. We are starting a movement called Everwalk. We're going to walk the beautiful outdoor corridors of America. We're going to walk from Chicago to St. Louis and finish under the arch, the magnificent Gateway Arch. We're going to walk Boston to New York City. Nancy's helping me with all this, by the way. We're going to go Portland to Seattle, Orlando to Miami, Philadelphia to Washington, D.C., L.A. to San Diego, Reno to San Francisco. And after 5 years, they say sitting is the new smoking. And the whole idea here is, let's get away from our screens. Let's be in this beautiful country of ours. Let's not be so divisive. Let's walk shoulder to shoulder and enjoy it together. And after 5 years of all these long, epic walks, we're going to go all the way across country, from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, and we're going to get 1 million people to do it with us. So I'm just trying to say that in the nearly 3 years since that Labor Day walk up onto the beach, 2013, a lot has come my way, and a lot of opportunity for the future has been presented in front of me. And how can I be more humble to say that it's been a heady time. It's been the best time of my life. But the truth is, what I've been living these 3 years since the end of that swim is sort of summed up in that old Henry David Thoreau quote. And he said, when you achieve your dreams, it's not so much what you get, it's who you become. And I can tell you right here, I stand before you this evening, I'm so gratified to see all your faces, sincere, the energy it's taken for you to come out and be here with me tonight. I don't succeed at everything I try, by any means. But I can promise you that I refuse to let this one wild and precious life drift idly by. Thank you for your time. Was I the only girl in my family? No, I have a sister. I have a wonderful sister. And she's 5 years younger than I am. She's not an athlete, but a humanitarian and a good soul on this planet. I had a brother who was mentally ill, and he died at the age of 57. My brother was named William. And when he was about 8, and I was 3 years older, he came to my parents, who were pretty democratic, and he said, I wonder if we could have a family discussion. I said, yeah, what's the problem? He said, well, it's just that name. I appreciate it. I know it's history. It's William Shakespeare and all that, but you've watched me my whole long life. I've tried Bill and Billy and Will and William, and it's just William, it's just not me. And they said, really? Have you given any thought to who the real you is? And he said, yeah, I should be Sharif. And I think they figured, well, he's a little kid. He'll forget about that in about a week. But he called himself Sharif all his life. He had his name legally changed. And so when I saw this working, a couple months after he got through that, I went to them. And I said, I wonder if we could have a little family discussion. And they said, okay, what did he say? I said, you know that name, Diana, goddess of the moon. It's wonderful from the Greek and all that. They said, yeah, so what is it? I said, I really think my real name should be James. And they said, go to your room. So, yes, I had a brother and a sister. Anybody else? Yes?
You said that 30 years went by where you did not take a stroke in the water, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why not?
You know, number one, I think that I was, I hate to use the word bitter. I don't like to think of myself as being bitter, but maybe a synonym to that. I was hurt from not being able to achieve Cuba in my prime. It was truly my holy grail. It'd be like someone who, John McEnroe talks often about, you know, he was the great champion, but he never won the French Open. So instead of sitting around all these years and remembering his great Wimbledon and US Open victories, the French Open eats at him. He remembers the red clay. He remembers being up 2 sets to love over Yvonne Lendl and losing. He